In the rugged land of Laconia, far from the marble columns of Athens, stood a city unlike any other in Greece, Sparta. Here, every heartbeat of society pulsed to one singular rhythm: war. From the moment a child was born, its worth was judged not by beauty or intellect, but by strength. Weakness was not tolerated, for Sparta had no room for fragility. Infants were inspected by the city's elders. If they deemed the child unfit for the harsh demands of Spartan life, it was left to perish on the rocky slopes of Mount Taygetus. This brutal custom was not born of cruelty, but of necessity. Every Spartan life was to serve the state, and only the strongest could endure its relentless demands. At the age of 7, boys were taken from their families and entered the Agoge, the legendary Spartan training system. From that moment, they ceased to belong to their parents. They belonged to Sparta. The barracks became their home, the other boys their brothers, and the endless drills their new way of life. Life in the Agoge was stripped to the bone. The boys were given a single rough cloak to wear year-round. They slept on beds of reeds they cut themselves from the riverbanks, learning early that comfort was a luxury they would never know. Cold winters and scorching summers hardened them, while hunger gnawed at their bellies, a hunger that would teach them cunning. Food was deliberately scarce, forcing the boys to steal to survive. But theft was not condemned, failure was. A boy caught stealing would be beaten mercilessly, not for taking food, but for lacking the skill to do it unseen. This taught them stealth, resourcefulness, and the ruthless cunning that would serve them on the battlefield. Training was constant and merciless. Days began before sunrise with barefoot runs over rough terrain. Wrestling matches bloodied knuckles and scraped knees. Wooden spears were thrust and parried until muscles screamed in pain. In Sparta, pain was a teacher, and every bruise was a lesson in endurance. Spartan boys were not only trained in body, but in mind. They memorized the laws of Lycurgus, recited war songs, and learned to speak in the famously sharp and brief laconic style. Words were to be few but powerful, the same economy of force they would use in combat. Obedience was absolute. Orders were followed without question, no matter how harsh or unreasonable. A Spartan's life was not his own. It belonged to the phalanx, the state, and the legacy of Sparta itself. In this collective mindset, the shield became more than protection. It was the lifeline of the man beside you. By 12, the trials grew harsher. Boys were stripped of even basic comforts and sent into the wild with nothing but a dagger. Here they learned to forage for food, craft shelter, and hunt silently in the forest. Survival was no longer a drill, it was life or death. Some of these youths would be chosen for the Crypteia, Sparta's shadow war against the Helots, the enslaved population who tilled the land. These secret missions required the utmost stealth and nerve, as boys stalked their targets at night, learning skills that blurred the line between warrior and assassin. Festivals and public ceremonies tested endurance in ways outsiders found shocking. During certain rites, boys were whipped at the altar of Artemis Orthia, competing to see who could endure the pain in silence the longest. Blood spilled not as punishment, but as proof of courage and devotion to Sparta. Music and dance also played roles in the Agoge, but even these arts were martial. Songs praised courage in battle and mocked cowardice. Dances mimicked combat maneuvers, preparing boys for the rhythm of war. Even beauty in Sparta was tied to strength and discipline. Mock battles were a constant. Boys of different age groups faced off with wooden weapons, learning to fight in phalanx formations. Victories brought pride, defeats brought lessons. The battlefield was not an abstract concept. It was rehearsed daily until instinct replaced thought. At 15, the boys were lean, scarred, and unflinching. Their bodies had been honed into weapons, their minds into steel. Compassion was reserved for comrades, cruelty for enemies. A Spartan youth understood that honor lay not in survival, but in standing firm even in death. Meals were simple and communal. The infamous black broth, in a mixture of pork, vinegar, and blood, was their staple. Visitors often recoiled at its taste, but for Spartans, it was the flavor of endurance, a meal that stripped away luxury and prepared them for campaign life. The Agoge also forged unbreakable brotherhood. Boys raised together in hardship formed bonds deeper than family. These bonds would carry into the phalanx, where each man's shield protected his neighbor more than himself. In battle, a Spartan did not fight for personal glory, but for the man beside him. As they neared adulthood, their training shifted to mastery. They learned advanced tactics, how to hold the line under cavalry charge, how to exploit terrain, how to feign retreat to lure an enemy. In this way, every Spartan soldier became not just a fighter, but a tactician. Graduation came at age 20. Those who endured the Agoge's relentless trials earned full citizenship and a place among Sparta's warriors. Those who failed were cast out, stripped of honor, and condemned to live as inferiors, a fate worse than death to a Spartan. Even after graduation, training never ceased. Daily drills, hunts, and competitions kept their bodies sharp and their minds sharper. The Agoge was not just a phase of life, it was the foundation of a lifetime of discipline and war. The women of Sparta, too, played a role in shaping warriors. Unlike in other Greek cities, Spartan women trained in athletics and spoke openly, encouraging sons and husbands to return with their shields, or on them. Their approval was as vital as the laws of Lycurgus. Comparisons with Athens highlight Sparta's uniqueness. Where Athenians prized philosophy and art, Spartans valued silence and endurance. In Athens, debate was a civic duty. In Sparta, brevity and obedience were virtues. The two city-states embodied opposite ideals of Greek life. Sparta's harsh system produced soldiers feared across the ancient world. Persian envoys once marveled at how Spartans willingly marched into certain death, their discipline unshaken. The Agoge's training forged men who embraced sacrifice as the highest honor. The world remembers the Spartans for their stand at Thermopylae, but it was in the Agoge where those warriors were truly made. The courage of the 300 was born not in a single battle, but in years of hunger, pain, and relentless training. The legacy of the Agoge endures. It stands as a symbol of extreme devotion to discipline and unity, qualities that continue to fascinate historians and inspire warriors millennia later. In Sparta, the body and soul were molded into one, a perfect instrument of war. Thank you for watching this deep dive into the Spartan Agoge, the brutal yet fascinating system that created the most feared warriors of ancient Greece. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and subscribe for more explorations into the epic battles and lives of history's greatest fighters.